Hey everyone, welcome to another G News podcast. Well, earlier today I said Election 26 is coming and I will try very hard to bring you valuable information. Tonight is one of those occasions. We've got Ginny Andersen, that's Labour's spokesperson for education, with us tonight. Hey Ginny, welcome back to G News.
Kia ora, thanks for having me, Jared.
Oh, it's always good. Recently, I heard from somebody that Erica Stanford, who actually has a bit of a reputation for not consulting people or getting back to people when she implements things, had promised you that she was going to give you a briefing after the budget. And I was just curious on behalf of everybody whether she has extended an invitation to that briefing yet and you've got it in your diary, or whether you've had it or not.
It's not confirmed as far as I'm aware. So on day one in the job, which is getting on to 11 or 12 weeks now, on day one I asked for a briefing and I still haven't got that. I think we've been working to lock in a time. I think she did offer me officials, but I was more interested in sitting down with her for a chat in person. So I'm looking forward to that whenever it does roll around.
Yeah, because there's a statement around that's like education should be a bit bigger than politics, you know, when it comes to, our children and our future. And that seemed to ring true. But we're seeing that so much of this feedback, I think, from the sector that says we're not seeing a hell of a lot of consultation. Things are getting ram-rated through. We've seen curriculum reviews. We've seen NCEA booted to touch. And we're back to something that looks like school cert used to look a long time ago, with some grades and winners and losers. So I just wanted to ask you, just sort of philosophically, Anna, what do you think about the idea of inclusive education versus one size fits all?
I think that's so important that we have an education system that acknowledges that all children learn differently. Some learn in different ways. And the current sort of approach that has come with Erica Stanford, they actually say their motto is all brains learn the same. The minister has said this, and this is the science of learning. So there's only one way to learn. And so we know from having our own children that they learn differently, whether that's by the way they learn, or maybe that's even through neurodiversity or other things that kids might have. So the ability to meet a learner where they're at is really important. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we'll just leave kids behind. And we've got a great example of where this did happen. These same changes were implemented in the UK in around 2010, and all of those findings from evaluating it, they proved that if there were existing inequalities, then they were further entrenched. And so for New Zealand, that will be lower socioeconomic areas, those communities already struggling under cost of living pressures, Māori, Pacifica, disability, all of the areas we know where people already struggle to access good quality education. Those groups will be further marginalised under these changes, and that's a real concern.
You mentioned Erica Stanford bringing in what looks like something from the UK. To what extent do you think that possibly what we're seeing here is all predetermined, a bit of capturing going on from some think tanks associated with, I guess, what we would call the Atlas Network over here, bringing their approach, ramming it through, appointing their people, excluding all the other experts, and just ramming things through without really listening to all the local expertise and advice, and kind of making sure that something a little bit foreign and overseas replaces our national identity in education.
Yeah, it is. The more you kind of look at it, it is a bit insidious. I find that there's no secret the fact that the New Zealand Institute, which is part of the Atlas Network, have had deep involvement in not only the curriculum but all of these changes. So Michael Johnston, who has been on the Ministerial Advisory Group, he's been in close contact with the minister right throughout. And if you're interested, you can go onto their website, New Zealand Institute's website, who were formerly the Business Roundtable. They changed and joined a while ago. But they've got this sort of document about their view on education and what changes should happen. And you can literally go and tick off all the things that have been happening under Erica Stanford's watch that are just straight out of the playbook of the NZ Institute. And the only one they haven't done, they've done everything except the SMART tool, which is this new tool they've bought in from Aussie, that will be used to performance pay for teachers. So that's the only thing that hasn't been done out of that list. And so it is really concerning that these ideas and the, I guess, the intent are coming from, a free market think tank or a right wing think tank is having such a direct impact on our education system.
Yeah, and I guess what we're also, looking at is teachers trying to be heard, trying to speak out, getting told, non-disclosure agreements, can't talk, being gagged, not being able to, actually hear. And we've been seeing things like commercial media hyping up Erica Stanford to the moon. The mood of the boardroom, thinks she's wonderful, etc. But none of these people really know necessarily the first thing about education, and so they've created this kind of like popular winning Erica Stanford out there. But to what extent is she really an expert? What's her qualifications?
I've got in trouble already for asking her if it was her experience putting out a couple of episodes of Piha Rescue that gave her the requisite skills to take it upon herself to decide what the content is for all of our kids in their curriculum. But one thing I want to get out really clear is I was in Otago University today in Dunedin, and I met with the group that do the curriculum insights. So this is what's been happening in New Zealand for, I think it's like the early 90s, so like a good 30 years. And they basically test kids where they're at with English, with maths. They go and do a really good, non-biased, completely well-researched piece of a study that looks at where kids are at, so they can track achievement, very well. And they told me that there's been no change, it's just flatlined. Since 2013, maths in our primary school it's just not really changed that much. We could have done better, sure, but it hasn't gone worse and it hasn't got better. It's just kind of tracked the same way since 2013. So this begs the question, how can Erica Stanford say that there was this decline or this crisis with maths, and then she's also said that she's kind of nearly fixed it? She's got some improvement happening already. So this is just a typical kind of like concocted or manufactured distress in order to come with a ready-made fix, which is the way she's brought in these curriculum from. I've sort of fixed the problem. But I think it's really unfortunate that New Zealanders have largely been led down the garden path in terms of the state of decline that just didn't exist for literacy and numeracy.
Yeah, I really hope that before this election, people wake up and actually realise how they've been deceived to some extent here. All this hype that isn't really based on real improvement in maths, etc. That's just really, teachers have been trying to tell us all that the public just needs to get it through their heads. I agree with you. Now, we've also seen change happening at a breakneck speed. We've seen things happening so fast that they don't look very well planned. Mm-hmm. Could you comment a little bit about what you've seen in terms of implementation?
It's kind of like the wheels wobbling and coming off. That's pretty much how fast things have been going. And this is a deliberate tactic to move so quickly that people can't keep up and complain or protest with it, just to keep it moving. We've seen this happen with this government in other areas. So it's not giving any time for the things to bed in. And that's not just for teachers, that's for students and for parents to understand what these changes mean as well. And so I think we almost need to just have a step back and say, what do we want? Like as parents, we want an education for our children that sets them up as well as possible for a really challenging world. And so reading, writing and maths, of course, they're vital. They are absolutely important building blocks of an education system. But our kids are going to need more than what we just had. They're going to need critical thinking. How do you tell the difference between what's a truth and a lie? How to solve problems, how to be creative. These are all the skills that we know are going to set our children up well for a really challenging world. And so just giving them the same skills we got when we were at school is really setting them up to fail.
Yeah, you've said you'll keep some of these things that are actually in the reform that we've seen because a lot of them were actually initiated, I suppose, by Labor. And we've got your position coming out soon. Can you talk to us a little bit about what aspects Labor did sort of seed here that have been taken up by National, and when we might hear some detail about where Labor's at in the before the election?
Yeah, so in terms of structured literacy, this was sort of held up to be a new thing that's going to fix the problem. But the reality was that was happening anyway. So structured literacy is just one way of teaching, and there are lots of ways. So teachers have those as different methods for teaching a child, and it depends on what works for that particular student. So I think it just limits the ability for a teacher to kind of connect with a kid. My mum and dad were both teachers, and I went to rural schools, Great Barrier and Pirinoa and Wairarapa. So I was often in the same class when my parents were teaching. And I remember one case where we would have there was a boy about 6 or 7 who just wasn't engaged in class. He was not interested, not going to participate. I don't know why, but it was pretty clear he loved trains. He had a set of trains. He brought them in. That's what he wanted to do. And so Mum got him reading a book on trains. Before long, he was writing a story on trains, and he was able to then join in. So the ability of the teacher to understand what interests someone or picks up some kind of get their wheels spinning to be interested. That's how you can reach in and make a child sort of want to learn and find the benefits of education. But this system, what it does is it just is like my way or the highway. Teachers are expected to teach a certain fact at a certain time and then test it immediately afterwards. And it's all based on memorizing and repeating this sort of old school way that maybe we learnt our tables. I mean, that's handy, but there's other ways and more ways that can be utilised, and I'm afraid that we're losing what it is to be human by just putting everything in a box and boiling it down to a number. I don't know if that answers. Oh no, you asked me about
Labor.
so what I've come out clear so far and sort of had a position from us on is we would definitely reinstate the treaty. So 127 that was removed, the 2000 schools that said we want it back. We're on board with that. We think that's who we are. The treaty is part of our story, and we can't hide from that. So we're in support of reinstating that. I've said it clearly that for the curriculum, maths and English, they're okay. They've been in place since the start of the year. To rip those out now as that part of the curriculum would be really unsettling and cause more sort of destabilisation. So for now, we can live with those there. But the other parts of the curriculum, like the social sciences, the science, they're really dense, and there's some pretty wacky stuff in there. They're not like at the right age, most experts say, like they're giving kids like ancient Egypt in year 3. There's some questions about whether that's a great idea. Maybe you could have it over a wider period of time and a bit more flexibility. But the whole system is kind of like must teach this fact at this age in that year group and then test them on it in order to rank them and figure out, where they're at. So we would take a look at that curriculum, the parts that haven't been implemented yet, put New Zealand eyes over it, have Kiwi content, and slow it down so it's just not being rammed into place so quickly.
Fabulous, yeah.
And the other part I've kind of called out is the politicisation. So with the Teachers' Council, with the way Aero, the Education Review Office, they're kind of being used as sort of political tools. And we sort of, I believe that education is bigger than politics, and we should be putting our kids and their learning first and foremost, not just, ticking a box and proving that we're right.
Bravo. I think there's a huge number of people out there will be so glad to hear you say that. This notion, I just clarify here, the treaty obligations, and Erica Stanford trying to make out that, treaty obligations have nothing to do with school boards, even though they're Crown entities. What's your position on that? And can we expect that to come back with Labor?
Yeah, I've said clearly we will bring that back, but it's bigger than just that. It's about New Zealand content. It's about having not only a curriculum, but resources and ways of teaching that tell our stories and teach our children to be proud of who we are, to know our place in the world and know where we've come from. That gives us confidence, that makes a sense of, of identity, national identity. Those things are fundamental for young people to have. And so to have not only the treaty, but Māori words, New Zealand content, Aotearoa histories, all of these things stripped away, and then they're replaced with books from Aussie and stuff that most people look at and say, just not relevant, can't see myself in it. So we know that if kids can see themselves in a part of it, they want to engage. So there's a real concern that the overall is just not acknowledging who we are as Kiwis and being proud of who we are.
Yeah, let's get back to that. Charter schools, Labour. There's about 16 of these charter schools out there at the moment. Some 1,400 to 1,500 students are now enrolled, and there's a few more to come, I think, this year. What's Labour's position on charter schools and why?
Well, I would, if I was the minister, they can, as last time, there's nothing I've seen that they can't do within a special character. So there are already schools of special character, whether they be of a religion or a certain way of operating or with a certain theme that they have. We have existing legislation and provision for schools of special character. And so those charter schools would simply come into that framework. But there's another bit to that you kind of need to know too. So this legislation that was meant to have its third reading just last week, but it got held up because of all the homeschooling stuff that had to be taken out at the last minute. So it's the Education Reform Bill. What that bill does is it sort of introduces the new system with the Education Review Office, which will be able to rank all schools. So it'll be like a league table. And so those schools that already struggle with attendance due to a whole bunch of reasons, often poverty is a big factor on attendance in some parts of the country. So if schools are already challenged, they will get a review where they're ranked down the bottom, and they will then be labelled School of Concern, so publicly labelled a School of Concern. And then once they've got that branding, they are able to be taken over by a charter school. Wow. So if there wasn't an uptake of charter schools already, what this new system does, and this is where all the testing comes in. So the structured curriculum, the testing kids heaps, the ranking everyone, the ranking the schools, the SMART tool, all of this is a system of being able to identify the bottom ones that aren't performing and enabling those to be privatised and taken over by charter schools. And under that legislation, charter schools will able to have chains like McDonald's. They'll be like, you'll be able to have a chain of charter schools, and that in terms of economy scale of bigger corporates to come in, and there's more sense for doing that if you can have a number of schools. So that's what our education system is looking at right now. It's really scary that we have that looking down the barrel of that right now.
Wow. Hope you all heard that, everybody. Now, when it came to the saga of school lunches, talking about stripping things back and saving a penny from, our children and not feeding them expensive food. What is the story there? What's happened recently, and where's Labour at? What's Labour's position on?
It's a long sordid tale of really awful. Some of the pictures I get sent still of mould and bits of metal and bugs, and it's just awful. So that we had them funded, they were knocked back to $3 a meal, and you had big outfits like Compass who got the contract, and kids are still being served slop, really. And so we have said that we'll reinstate it. What we had funded it was about $8 a meal in some places. We need to do the sums on that. It might not be quite at that level, but what we will favour is local communities being the providers. Some of the best examples I've seen of local lunches is, I'll give a shout out to Arakuta School in Wainuiomata, where they would make like a beautiful big butter chicken dish. The parents would come in and cook it. And then in the hall, they would lay out all of the tables with tablecloths and and each kids would set the table. and then there'd be a parent or a teacher aide or a teacher at each table. And so those kids got to sit down, enjoy their kai, have a good conversation, and learn all of those good things that we need to learn as human beings through that food. So we think there's huge benefit in not just only having healthy, good food, so you're full and you can learn, but, growing the veggies, seeing where they come from, learning how to prepare them, and seeing the enjoyment of sharing food with others and what that brings.
Now, there's a teacher workforce shortage in South Auckland and in Otago over on the East Coast and a number of other places as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about what that means for secondary schools and their communities and those places, and Labor's position on solving some of those problems.
Yeah, we've had a real shortage in some areas, and that's a huge pressure on teachers. It does mean sometimes that we're having people who aren't trained teachers who are in classrooms because of the lack of ability to find teachers. The concern I have is that already the sector is under a huge amount of pressure, and what I've had many teachers, I've lost count, who have said to me, if National win the election on the 7th of November, I don't think I can stay in the profession. The expectations on me to implement this curriculum, to deliver all of these changes, to be accountable publicly and potentially ranked and embarrassed if we're not doing the right things, those pressures are too great, and they take away the reason why teachers want to is to have the ability of helping others, to give them to learn and to enjoy that process. All of that enjoyment has been taken away. So yes, we already have a real problem with teacher shortages, and it's only looking to get worse if these changes continue to be implemented.
How would you sum up things in education so far in this term of government? And finally, if you've got any messages for everybody out there that you'd really like them to take away, what would those be?
For people to be aware that it's being privatised, people need to understand that all of these changes are removing the obstacles that enable a full-scale privatisation of our education system, whether that's the Teaching Council changes, whether that's the enablement of universities not to train teachers and have private providers training, or whether that be the content that's being generated offshore and in the curriculum that's being measured by tools that are also corporates that are measuring. So what we are seeing is a full-scale attack on public education. And the biggest concern is that I always grew up believing that no matter where you came from in New Zealand, you had the opportunity to be educated and to get ahead in life, and that you could succeed no matter what your start in life was. That's been taken away from children, from this generation of children, because we know for a fact that if this curriculum and these changes continue to be implemented, more and more children will be denied the opportunity to be successful in New Zealand. And that is something to fight for, I think.
Ginny Andersen, thank you so much for your time tonight. It's been really valuable, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Welcome to G News, the good news.